There was an old man. He was a hateful old man. Nobody much liked him. So he just kept to himself. He lived in a old rundown cabin way back in the cypress swamp up on Pocomoke. And he didn't do nothing all day. He just sat in his chair in front of the fireplace. Sometimes he'd go out and hunt. He'd shoot him a duck or a rabbit. Sometimes he'd just go and steal stuff out of his neighbor's gardens, like onions and carrots and potatoes, tomatoes, whatever he could get. And he kept a big old black kettle over his fire all the time. And he kept him a stew in there. And he'd just throw whatever he stole or whatever he could hunt up, he'd throw it in the stew. Some people says he didn't even clean nothing, didn't clean a rabbit, just threw it in there, hair and all. Same way with a duck, didn't even care about the feathers. I don't know if that part's true or not. Well, one day he's sitting there in his chair in front of his fire, and he heard something scurrying down around underneath his feet. And he looked down there, and there's a hole in the floor of the cabin. Well, he knew that hole was there. It's been there for about 2 or 3 years. And he kept meaning to fix it, but he never did. But since he heard that scurrying down there, he looked, and there's these 2 yellow eyes looking up at him. Well, that man wasn't scared of much, but he still didn't like them yellow eyes looking at him. One thing he couldn't understand is how come the dogs wasn't barking. You see, he had 3 big mean dogs. They was cur dogs. They was all mixed up, different breeds of dogs. Some people say they had some Chesapeake Bay Retriever in them. Some people say Plot Hound. Might even had some sheepdog or something, because they were big dogs. Had short hair though. One of them just had one eye, and the other one walked with a limp all the time, or something got in its leg. And the dogs' names was Bite 'em, Sick 'em, and Get 'em. And they were mean. They lived under the porch. The old man just fed them scraps, whatever he had left over from his soup. Most of the time, they just had to hunt for themselves. But the dogs didn't bark, but the old man wasn't worried about that thing with yellow eyes, because he kept a big old butcher knife right down beside his chair. It was as long as an axe handle. He made it himself. Some people says he made it out of a Civil War sword. I don't know. He eased his hand down there and he grabbed that butcher knife. He picked it up beside him. And that thing went skittering around down there again. But the old man just sat there real still. He didn't move. Eventually it come easing out. And I don't know what it was. It was ugly. It was long like a weasel, and it had ears like a bobcat, kind of bent over, you know. Its fur was all matted and mangy. It had a great big long tail. Didn't have no hair on its tail at all. And that thing eased on out. And it started easing up toward the old man. The old man had his knife and he couldn't stand it anymore, and he started to raise his knife, and when he did, that thing saw him and he took off running, scurrying back down in the hole. But the man was pretty fast and he got his knife, and but he missed it. But he got its tail. And he cut its tail clean off. He had that old hairless tail in his hand, and he looked at it, and he just throwed it in his soup pot. Let it boil for a while, and then I guess he ate it. And then he went to bed, because his belly was full. And he went right to sleep. And after he'd been sleeping for a couple of hours, he heard something in his room. Sounded like that same noise he heard before when he's sitting in his chair. And then he thought he saw something down at the end of the bed, and he looked down there. He saw them two bent over ears, just kind of poking up. And it started getting up higher and higher, and finally he saw them two yellow eyes, and they was glowing in the darkness. And then he heard it. TailyPo, TailyPo, all's I wants is my TailyPo. Bite 'em, get 'em, sick 'em, the old man called to his dogs, and the dogs come running out from under the porch, and they came running around the side of the house. Arf, 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 arf. And the thing scurried off, and arf, 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 you could hear the dogs disappearing arf, 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 out into the distance in the swamp. Arf. And a few minutes later, the dogs come back, but this time Bite 'em didn't come home. Well, thought the old man, I guess he found something else to chase out there in the woods. Surely they got that thing, so he pulled up his covers up over him and went back to sleep. About an hour later, he heard it again. As that thing come back. And sure enough, he looked down at the end of his bed, and there's them two ears starting to poke up. And then there's them two eyes, and they were glowing just as yellow as can be. TailyPo, TailyPo, all's I wants is my TailyPo. Get 'em, sick 'em, he called the dogs, and the dogs come running out from under the porch and come running around the side of the house. The thing scurried off. Arf, 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 arf. You could hear them chasing it out through the swamp. Arf, 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 arf. And when the dogs come home, this time there was only one. Sickum was the only one left. Well, the old man was getting worried, so this time he just sat up in the bed for a while. He pulled the covers up beside him, and he listened. There's that noise again. And he looked down at the end of the bed, and sure enough, here come them two ears. Bright yellow eyes, and they were shining brighter than ever this time. Just scary bloodshot yellow eyes. TailyPo, TailyPo, all's I wants is my TailyPo. Sick 'em, sick 'em, sick 'em, get that thing, the man called out. Arf, 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 arf. The dog come running around the side of the house, and things scurried off. And you could hear it disappearing out into the woods. Arf, 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 arf. And the man sat there and waited, but sick 'em never came home. So he's a little bit scared this time. So he just sat there listening. And listening. He thought he heard something. There it was again. This time it's a little bit louder. It sounded like he was right down at the foot of his bed. And he looked down there, and there's those two ears come peeking up. And then there's them two yellow bloodshot eyes glowing just like the moon or something. TailyPo, TailyPo, All I want is my TailyPo. But I ain't got your TailyPo, said the man. I ain't got your TailyPo. TailyPo. The thing kept saying it. TailyPo. All I want is my TailyPo. I can't give you your TailyPo, said the old man. I can't give it to you. I ate it. The thing disappeared. And then you heard the awfulest racket you ever heard in your life. And about a week later, some people showed up at the cabin because they hadn't heard nothing from the old man. And they never did find him. All they found his clothes, and they found blood splattered all over the sheets and all over the walls. But nobody ever did know what happened to him. But some people says that thing got its tail back.